So I'll be going through some ethical issues facing correctional officers today. So excessive force is a current ethical issue. It is defined as any force that is above and beyond what is necessary to control a situation. Although the use of force is legal in a correctional setting, excessive force is not, and it could lead to severe injury of inmates, possible lawsuits, criminal indictments, as well as scrutiny from the community. The excessive force directly violates prisoners' Eighth Amendment rights to protection against cruel and unusual punishment, and this was established in the case of Hudson v. McMillan, as well as Wilkins and Gaddy. Sexual misconduct is also another ethical issue that is faced by the correctional facilities. It's any behavior that is sexual in nature directed towards an inmate by any person who represents the correctional facility. Inmates are in a position of powerlessness, so although they may consent, quote unquote, consent to sexual activity, they can't fully consent due to inmates' position of powerlessness. This is a power disparity between inmates as well as officers. Sexual favors can be forced onto inmates. Inmates can comply to this out of fear, compliance, or to even gain protection. And this is also another violation of the Eighth Amendment right. So the last ethical issue that I'll be going through is selective rule enforcement. It occurs when officers select which rules to enforce or not enforce. It's also applicable to officers as well as their possible misconduct. It directly mirrors the blue wall of silence. Certain inmates may have rules more strictly and heavily enforced due to previous criminal convictions. These judgments can extend to physical appearances or officers' previous biases for the individual. But the opposite effect can also happen to an officer if they have a close personal connection to an inmate. And this overall just compromises the legitimacy of the correctional facility's rules as well as the laws in place. Some leading factors that lead to this kind of misconduct: excessive force. Officers may feel the need to assert their power, especially in cases where inmates are non-compliant. And this also can lead to anger, rumination, which leads into increased aggression and retaliation, which can also lead to excessive force. For sexual misconduct, inmates are easily able to be coerced and manipulated due to their lack of freedoms and rights. And officers are set in a position of power to do this. And for selective rule enforcement, favoritism for inmates. This can lead to selective rule enforcement as well as profiling and targeting of specific inmates. And also the blue wall of silence also adds to this kind of misconduct of selective rule enforcement. Some theoretical implications from the text: egoism, ethics of care, and ethical formalism. For egoism, officers may be led by personal interests and motivations, such as sexual favors, acceptance amongst other officers for turning a blind eye, or a personal drive to prove the presence of power to the inmates. Ethics of care: sexual misconduct is a clear compromise of this ethics of care. It's a blatant rape of inmates who are unable to consent, as well as a possible re-traumatization of female inmates that may have a history of sexual abuse. It could also be applied to officers who favor inmates. Officers may feel that bending the rules for preferred inmates comes from a place of care. For ethical formalism, officers believe that selective rule enforcements for favored individual inmates and officers will come from a place of goodwill. Officers may also apply this to sexual relationships between inmates. Officers may see this relationship between inmates as a kind of personal support for the inmate. So I believe a plan of action to help this kind of misconduct is increased training for officers entering correctional facilities, emphasize the impact of misconduct on the inmates, as we listed for sexual misconduct as a kind of re-traumatization for the inmates. And we also like to utilize some kind of simulated and scripted training for inmates for specifically non-compliance. This can help officers regulate their anxieties as well as possible angers towards inmates. and as well as strictly enforcing laws set in place for correctional officers. They're more likely to be followed if officers see that misconduct is actively being punished. And similar tactics have been placed in correctional facilities with positive outcomes, but I believe that if they're more intensely implemented as well as more regularly implemented into officers' regular trainings, it will help improve to lower this kind of misconduct. And here are my sources.